Okay, I think I did a lot of talking on the last thing. So I will go to our resident Celtics fan, Adam Spinella. The Celtics win this game 110 to 107. Crazy finish, obviously, in that
Ooh.
last, you know, minute and a half, but ends with a Jason Tatum 3-pointer with 1.5 seconds left. Joel Embiid takes an inbounds pass, throws up a heaved 65-footer, and it goes in, but it was just after the buzzer. And Joel knew it as soon as he shot it. That was just after the buzzer. Spins, what was your biggest impression of this game?
A lot of different takeaways here, Sam. And as a Celtics guy, I was really encouraged to see the Boston Celtics be able to win a game or at least stay within striking distance in the earlier parts, particularly in the third quarter, while Jason Tatum was not at his best. It took him 3.5, almost 4 quarters to wake up and really have the best version of himself. The shot making at the end, he really responded, was able to get one open three that he pulled, had a couple nice ISO moves, and then obviously the stop on a dime, go ahead dagger in the final couple seconds there. But he wasn't great for most of the evening, inefficient, playing with a lack of energy. And I thought that there were a few players around him in particular that were able to pick that up. And it's Derek White, it's Malcolm Brogdon, it's Al Horford. Veterans who they have who understand the significance of the moment, the environment, the game that they're playing in. Look, the Celtics are in a dogfight for the top of the Eastern Conference standings. Those vets know the importance of winning a game like this on the road in Philly for keeping them number one in the East and potentially getting home court advantage. So for Al Horford to step up and hit huge 3-pointers in the third quarter to get the Celtics back and kind of tie the game or end up taking the lead through that stretch. Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White are such a marginal advantage on the second unit because when other guards sit, they punish the second unit for everyone else. They are so big and so physical. They're in tune defensively. They get into the basketball. They rebound well. And this Celtics team, particularly in the third and fourth quarters, was really, really connected on the defensive end of the floor. They were stunting at Joel Embiid. Every time he caught the ball, they made him think about whether they were doubling, who they were doubling with, and the Sixers offense kind of stalled out. One of the reasons that Boston was able to do this is because they put Rob Williams on PJ Tucker to be that weak side rim protector who could clean up any type of mess if Embiid ever got free or if somebody else cut or slipped around him. They did not care if PJ Tucker was going to jack corner threes the entire night. Put Rob Williams on him, throughout Grant, throughout sometimes Marcus Smart on switches, throughout Al Horford. They'd switch everything else and just say, Joel, you're going to have to guess possession after possession where our help comes from. And what an unbelievable group of veterans that can just play like this and make it happen for the Celtics. They were so good defensively in the final 14, 15 minutes of that game. Their offense started to click and Tatum made shots, but I was so impressed by Boston's defense down the stretch.
I'm so glad you talked about Boston because I feel like a lot of my takeaways are more 76ers based in this.
Okay.
And Boston obviously won the game. And they won in large part because Al Horford made 4 or 5 just enormous
Huge.
second half threes that also were wide open. Let's be clear about that. The pick and pop game, the driving kick game where Embiid has to help off of Al Horford. I thought that it was really, really well managed by Boston, well adjusted by Joe Mazzulla and that coaching staff to get Al Horford those looks. Frankly, by the players on the court as well. I think they recognized what was happening in terms of Joel Embiid staying deep in the paint and allowing Al Horford those potential opportunities.
Yeah, so there's one thing I always worry about with the Sixers when they have Embiid on the floor, and it's their transition defense. Because a lot of times in transition, Embiid just wants to run to the rim and take whoever goes to him. The Celtics are really smart about running to kind of 5-out spots and really forcing Embiid to either cross match onto somebody else or knowing that somebody's going to be open for 3. And that's where Horford really got his stuff started, was in transition. As the defense leading to offense, he had one time where he grabbed a rebound and tried to push, and no one matched up to him. He just dribbled right to the top of the key and drilled another 3. I think it was his third in that stretch of 4 3-pointers in the third quarter. Transition defense for Philly is always going to be a little bit of a worry, but Boston cross-matching on the other end made it so much more of a nightmare for the Sixers to try to figure out.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right about that. The thing I want to bring up first for the 76ers is you brought up all of these different ways that Boston defended Joel Embiid. And I don't think you're wrong. Like, I think you're absolutely correct just in terms of the different things they threw at the wall to see if it would work. I guess that's my point. Like, did any of it work? I don't really think any of it worked.
Yeah.
It was, I didn't think it was impactful. Like, Joel still goes for 41 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists. I thought he managed the doubles really well. There was a stretch in, I believe it was either the first or second quarter. It was the first quarter now looking at it. So right around the 5-minute mark, Embiid posts on the left side of the court against Horford. They double with Jason Tatum, and Harris just like 45 cuts right to the rim, and Embiid hits him. The first time Embiid hits him, wide open dunk. The second time Embiid hits him, delivers the pass. Great Grant Williams weak side transition to get a block, or weak side rotation to get a block. But I felt like he managed those double teams well. I feel like the Al Horford thing, where it used to be, oh, Al Horford's one of the great defenders who deals with Joel Embiid really, really well.
Yeah.
I thought Al Horford got manhandled.
Yeah, he got cooked. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not to say Al Horford is a bad defender. It's just to say that the run that Joel Embiid is on right now is something that's unbelievable. And I don't really know that there's anybody that can defend him. And I don't think that the Al Horford can defend him thing is a thing anymore. I think Joel, if you play him one-on-one with Al Horford's going to cook him. If you play him 1-on-2 with a man coming and digging into his handle, I think Embiid's going to cook him. And I think that's where, if I'm a 76ers fan, I feel really good about this. Joel Embiid, I think, is the best player on the court in that series. All due respect to Jason Tatum, the Sixers have actually done like a pretty good job on Jason Tatum the last couple of times they played him. I thought they did a pretty good job on him last night. It was a lot of DeAnthony Melton, just kind of frustrating him and annoying him on the perimeter. I thought Jalen McDaniels did like a pretty okay job for the limited minutes that he was asked to defend him. And then Tobias Harris had to guard him for a decent amount of time. And I think that the other piece of this is, to close the loop on Joel Embiid is going to be the best player in that series because the Celtics don't have any way to stop him. And I think they have enough bodies to throw at Jason Tatum to where they can at least marginally impact him in some way. And by the way, like when I say that they're going to be fine, I think the Celtics still win this series, to be clear. But if I was a 76ers fan coming off of that game, I would feel more positive, even though they lost that game at home in a way that had to feel like a dagger to the heart, right?
Yeah.
The other piece of this is Tobias Harris, I think, played really, really well. Did a great job in the defensive minutes that he was asked to play, at times on Jason Tatum, at times on Jaylen Brown. A lot of the time, he was just kind of asked to deal with one of the bigs, and I thought he did a pretty good job of that. Across the board, I thought Tobias Harris had a great game. He had like 19 points in the first 25 minutes. Just was super impactful, efficient, smart, managed things well. The problem for the 76ers right now is not the starters. Honestly, if it was the starters against starters, I think I would pick the 76ers to beat Boston right now.
Ooh.
I think that the 76ers bench is entirely ill-equipped in a Boston series, almost like top down. Tyrese Maxey really has problems against the Celtics right now because of the number of big guards and the number of cross matches that the Celtics can create mismatches off of Tyrese Maxey on. He really has struggled against the Celtics, it feels like, the last couple of times they've played. And it is in part defensively, it's a problem for him. And look, he didn't play super well offensively yesterday either. He went 4 of 10, 0 of 2 from 3, and only had 8 points. But defensively is where I'm a little bit more concerned about Tyrese. George Niang, I love George Niang. I don't know how playable he is in that series. They just worked that mismatch every single time. Tried to get Jaylen Brown on him, tried to get Jason Tatum on him. I don't know if you can play him. in a series against Boston, which is concerning. Paul Reed was a nightmare in the 5 minutes he played. And in the next second half of that rotation, they eventually pulled him off very quickly and put on PJ Tucker as like a small ball 5. And that's just not something you can do against Boston. I don't think they're going to bludgeon you if you do that. They're too big with the ability to play Al Horford and Rob Williams together in those minutes. I don't know if Shake Milton can play in that series. I just, the guy that I felt okay about was Jalen McDaniels, but Jalen McDaniels is limited and you don't know if he's going to be able to shoot and space the floor around Joel Embiid, around James Harden. James Harden was also not very good in this game. I didn't think. Struggled defensively, really struggled defensively. I think we'll leave it at that.
But I think that's where my optimism for the Celtics and the Celtics-Sixers series really comes in, is that they have a lot of different players at the point of attack who can frustrate Harden. They switch everything 1 through 4 when they weren't guarding with Robert Williams on Tucker. Like, they'd switch everything else, and that makes the offense really slow down for the Sixers, turns Harden much more into a scorer than a playmaker. And I think he's been so good this year because he's been really well equipped to have balance between passing and scoring. The last thing is, how many years in a row have we seen the Celtics and Sixers go at it and Joel Embiid have 30 to 45 points for the Sixers in a loss? This is the formula since Brad Stevens kind of took over, and seems to be continued last year with Ime and this year with Missoula. Throw a lot of different things at Embiid, try to make him play one-on-one, trade 2s for 3s with him, just trying to mismatch and go through people inside, bank on the fact that you can draw 1 or 2 charges with Marcus Smart, Derek White, whoever else gets mismatched there, and you neutralize everybody else. Because now the ball sticks in Embiid's hands and he tries to make it about him going one-on-one. Harden neutralized a little bit more. You don't get a ton of spot-up looks for anybody else because, hey, you can kind of leave PJ Tucker alone in the corner. This is the bet that Boston is making. It's why I still would go with them pretty cleanly in a best-of-7 series.
And I would too, only because I think that depth is incredibly important for them. And that bench unit, they're just going to bludgeon the Sixers anytime some of those bench units have to come on the court, especially in a 7-game series. You can't run out, especially in a series that could be the Eastern Conference Finals, where there is some real attrition at that point, right? Both those teams will be a little bit tired. It's going to be hard to run out Joel Embiid, James Harden, Tobias Harris 42 minutes a night and try and roll with what you can, and PJ Tucker 42 minutes a night. I don't really think you can do it, if I'm being completely honest. I think that they're going to need to figure out an answer for these bench units. Otherwise, the Celtics just win that series. But starters on starters, I feel okay about the 76ers in those games. It's just that the bench units, anytime that some of those guys come in, I think the Sixers bench guys are very ill-equipped to deal with the Boston bench guys or starters in any tangible way.
Yeah, you must have more optimism on PJ Tucker's fit on the offensive end than I do, because I think that there are a lot of different ways that the Celtics can exploit that and have it turn into a little bit more of 4-on-5 in that side of the floor.
I think that you're right. It's just that, again, if you're running it through Joel every time and you're using Rob Williams as the weak side help, and you have PJ Tucker on the opposite side of the court, right? You have PJ Tucker in the opposite corner in the right corner, Joel is on the left block. You're basically pulling Rob Williams a little bit away from the action because Joel is just going to go through, or he's going to stop and try and hit that little mid-range shot, or he's going to get to the basket so quickly that Rob's help is almost not there a lot of the time. So I'm a little bit less worried about that aspect of it, just structurally. I'm just more worried about any time that the 76ers are going to have to play these bench guys. I think it's going to be a problem.
I hope we see this turn into a best-of-7 series. I really enjoyed last night's game. It was a fun back and forth. I think the tactical chess pieces of just the way the Celtics play with all of their interchangeable pieces is a fun puzzle to try to watch Joel Embiid try to solve. I really would love to see this series come back in May.
Yeah, I would too. That game last night made me really excited about those two teams playing in a playoff series. The Lakers Mavs, while it would be interesting just to see Luka against LeBron and Kyrie and AD and all those guys on the court, I almost like don't know that I care to see that series as much. That Celtics-Sixers series would be really, really interesting just from a chess perspective,
Yeah.
from a coaching perspective, from mismatches, trying to find different ways to create opportunities for the guys on the court, all of those perspectives. I think that would be just an incredibly interesting series, and I think there's a decent chance we get it. So
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited. I would assume that it would have to be in the conference finals, meaning the Sixers would have to beat the Bucks, but I think that's like a 50-50 shot. Really,
Well,
I
well,
think it's a total toss up between those two.
The Bucks are only a game or so behind the Celtics, and there's a lot of time left, so
Yeah,
it could end up being a semifinal matchup. But either way, I do want to see that those two teams collide.
yeah, that's where I'm at too.